Welcome back, everyone. To round out our lecture on the fundamentals of physical activity, we're going to look at the research-backed benefits of physical activity. So this is why should you exercise and be active on a regular basis, even beyond what many people think of, which is just weight loss. So why else should you be active on a regular basis? Lots of things to consider here. First, it improves cognitive well-being. So you can see a little brain with the dumbbell here. It improves cognitive well-being, everything from memory and retention to reducing the risk and chances of cognitive decline, including Alzheimer's. It helps improve activities of daily living and maintain activities of daily living, particularly for older adults. This may not seem important now, but it will as you get older. This means you can still get up and around and move independently. It reduces the risks of falls and reduces the risk of fall-related mortality. It improves immune function, so you won't get sick as frequently or with as much severity. It improves cardiorespiratory health, reducing the risk of cardiorespiratory related mortality, including from things like heart attack and stroke, by lowering things like blood pressure and cholesterol, reducing the risk of hypotension, reducing the hypertension, reducing the risk of hyperglycemia. So it keeps your blood vessels healthier, lowers the risk of high blood sugar, high blood pressure, lowers the risk of type 2 diabetes, and can even help manage type 2 diabetes or be part of a treatment plan that reverses it. So lots of help when it comes to chronic disease. Now let's look at our body composition. We talked about this earlier when it comes to fat mass and lean mass. So can it help improve lean mass? Absolutely. Particularly resistance training can help build muscle mass, improve bone tissue. It can make more denser bone tissue, reduce the risk of developing osteoporosis or osteopenia, reduce age-related sarcopenia, muscle mass loss. So this can help not only with your physical function, your activities of daily living, your sports performance, and also your body composition and physical appearance. Can it help with weight loss? Yes, to some extent. There is some research that exercise helps with weight loss, though it isn't the most potent thing. It can help with weight loss, particularly when it's paired with sound nutritional strategies, which we'll look at in the next module. But it is very helpful for maintaining weight loss, and preventing weight gain. So it can help keep the body in a healthy place, though it's not necessarily like you're going to go exercise and lose a bunch of weight. You have to consider all kinds of health behaviors when it comes to managing weight overall. We also see lower risks of all kinds of chronic disease. So lower risks of, I said, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke, dementia, Alzheimer's, lower rates of many cancers. Some of the best improvements that we see, or the most profound, in my own personal opinion, are the improvements in mood and mental health. We see a lower risk and lower rates of anxiety, lower rates of depression, and even the management of some depression and anxiety. In fact, in mild to moderate depression and anxiety, exercise interventions have been shown to be as effective as the standard pharmaceutical treatments. Now, that is not to say that you shouldn't take medication if and when needed and prescribed by a doctor. It's just to say that exercise can be a great adjunctive therapy. And you see, these are some additional, more recent benefits that are shown in the 2018 physical activity guidelines for some of these other age groups. So improved bone health and weight status in children, improved cognitive function in youth, reduced risk of cancer at a number of different sites, improved cognitive function. I mentioned the reduced anxiety and depression risk, improved sleep, greater self-reported quality of life, better pregnancy outcomes, lower rates of gestational diabetes, postpartum depression, reduced risk of fall-related injuries, and lower rate of all-cause mortality. Plus, most importantly, it's not just that we want to extend lifespan, but we want to extend health span, which is the number of quality, healthy years you have. You don't just want to live a long time, you want to live a long time and feel good and move well. And that's something that exercise can do for you. And you'll remember, if you go back to the amount that's recommended, the baseline is 30 to 60 minutes of moderate activity 5 days a week. So that includes a brisk walk. If that's the minimum that you do, that is enough to achieve these benefits. And then if you like to, if you choose to, if you have time to, you can add on things like running, things like weightlifting, dancing, Zumba. Weightlifting 2 times a week is part of the requirements for those physical activity guidelines as well. But start where you're at and build from there. It doesn't have to hurt to work. Everything counts. It all matters. All right, now I mentioned before sedentary behavior. It's not just the amount of exercise you do, it's also how much time do you spend seated. Spoiler alert, I will tell you I am standing right now. I try as much as possible to stand while doing my work, which is not quite the same as getting some physical activity in, but hopefully attenuate some of the risk of sitting much of the time. So what is sedentary behavior? This is any waking behavior characterized by low energy expenditure that involves sitting, reclining, or lying down. So it's very low active activity. And think about the things that we do in life. We sit to eat, we sit in class. Many of us sit on the job if we work on a computer. We sit for leisure time in front of a computer, a phone, or a laptop. So we sit to drive. We spend a lot of time as a population sitting. This can include all types of sitting I just mentioned. And particularly one thing that's driven this up is screen time, right? Because we have many more options of things to do without having to move. So the NHANES, the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, showed that about half of children and adults' waking hours are spent sedentary. So seated, lying, or reclining, right? So think about what we do in schools, what we do at work, what we do after school. And we want to be finding more ways to be active. So you can see the basic takeaway from this is that sitting or sedentary time increases risk of all-cause mortality independent of physical activity. So there's no perfect sweet spot for each, but you can see this graph here. It's plotting the amount of moderate to vigorous physical activity on the x-axis and daily seated time on the y-axis. And you can see that even if someone gets a ton of physical activity and they get a lot of sitting time, they're still kind of in that red zone for an increased risk of all-cause mortality. Whereas the less they sit, the lower their risk. So both moderate to vigorous physical activity help. You can see kind of everywhere in this area, the more MVPA, moderate to vigorous physical activity, and the less seating time, the greater chance you have of landing in that green, lowering your risk of all-cause mortality. And then the greater seating time and the less physical activity, the more risk for all-cause mortality. And that means dying of any cause. Of course, these could be non-natural causes, but when you look across all-cause mortality, you'll see things that are related to sedentary behavior and that are not on both sides of the spectrum. So this shows us that both more sedentary time and lack of physical activity contribute to the development of chronic disease and disease-related mortality. So what can you do to reduce your risk, to improve your lifespan and your health span? Some guidelines to get moving. And like I said, we have a whole lecture on cardiorespiratory and a whole lecture on resistance training after this. So we're going to kind of drill even more deeply into this. But first, reduce your sedentary time and find ways to move. So think about that first. Look through your day and find the places where you are most sedentary. Where are you sitting, reclining, or lying the most? And how can you break that up a little bit? Can you set alarms to get up and stand and stretch? Can you go out for walking breaks? Can you do walking meetings? Can you get up and walk to the printer or walk to the coffee shop or whatever you might drive to, right? Where can you just sprinkle more movement in throughout your day? Something is better than nothing. So it doesn't have to hurt to work. And I am not against hard, high intensity structured physical activity. I love it, but I know that only 20% of the population is doing it. So when you tell yourself that it has to be sweaty, painful, the hardest, highest intensity workout that you can imagine, you have to burn 600 calories in an hour, whatever it is that you want to do, and you're not exercising right now, that is where that start and stop cycle comes into play. So don't start there. Start with what you know you can do and just gradually exceed your capacity. Remember that progressive overload protocol. You will slowly build on that like a set of stairs over time and get to where you want to go. So if you are not in any kind of physical shape where you can move regularly, or you do move regularly now, start with something gentle. Start with yoga, start with walking, start with calisthenics, start with something. Think about the FIT principle, frequency first. So get more days in per week if you can, even if it's for a short duration, 5 minutes and a low intensity, and then build from there, because consistency is key. You want to build the habit. So if you're new to exercise, start low, go slow. Now, another thing you can consider is a lot of people don't know where to begin, and we'll cover that a little here, but going into detail about it is beyond the scope of this class. So what can you do? Well, you can consider classes. You're a student here at Mesa College. We have an abundance of exercise classes, one of which I teach, total body conditioning. So if you are on campus, feel free to check that out. Check it out with another instructor. Consider hiring a trainer for a few sessions at a local gym to help you kind of build a basic repertoire. Or there are a ton of apps online now to get started with exercise training at home, things like Nike Run Club, Map My Run, Couch to 5K. There is xrx.net, which can help you start a resistance training or cardiorespiratory program, right? So lots of options online to get started. And then remember, again, if all else fails, the power and relative accessibility of a walk. If you have somewhere safe to get out and go for a walk and the weather's permitting and your body's permitting, go ahead and do it. Don't discount things because they don't feel painful. Okay, so we covered these things today. We went over exercise terminology, the amount of physical activity needed for optimal health, covered basic exercise principles, and described the benefits of physical activity. Now, I want you to take a brief minute. I don't know why we have that little floating bullet there, but we're going to ignore that. Take a minute to look back at our wellness wheel, our 8-figure wellness wheel, and think about your own personal, emotional, social, physical, occupational well-being. It's just one wellness wheel. There are other models. And think about how physical activity currently adds to or detracts from these different areas of your well-being. And how, if you're not getting sufficient physical activity now, adding more in could improve any of these areas. So that is where I will leave you today. Join me next for our look at cardiorespiratory exercise. Bye-bye.